Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today I'm going to be talking about the Joker's box office. So I actually did a full box office breakdown over on the Geeks and Gamers channel. It'll either be live in a little bit or might already be live. I'm not exactly sure. Obviously, Jeremy is still very much busy with New York Comic Con, and I believe he's at a Patriots game today as well. So a lot of things going on over with the Geeks and Gamers channel. So make sure you're subscribed over there if you've not done so already. But I wanted to do a video for the main channel as well because of the fact that, as you should all know at this point, I love this movie. Like, this is a movie that, to me, the more I think about it, the more I dive into it, the more that I try and break things down in my mind, the better that this movie gets. I feel like this is a movie that's just going to get better every single day that passes by. It's a film that it's going to be like a fine wine where it just gets better with age. And in all honesty, it comes down to a couple of different factors. For one, Joaquin Phoenix. I think that the main focus of all of this should always be on the Joaquin Phoenix performance, but just because of how not only is it a method type performance, not only does he just really firmly dive into the psychosis of someone with mental illness and that person eventually becoming the comic character that we know to be the Joker, but also with the amount of commitment that that type of role really deserves. The fact that this is a guy that's made it clear that he does not want to be a part of a franchise. The guy that's made it clear saying that he did this for the art. He did this for the performance. He did this for the fact that this was a role that he wanted to dive into, not because he thought it could make him famous, not because he thought it was going to be a giant paycheck, but because he thought that this was a story worth telling. And that alone, to me, really does merit this film to receive the accolades that it's receiving, the praise that it's getting, especially from fans. Last time I checked, there were several sites that have been covering the Rotten Tomatoes numbers because obviously we looked at that site as being just, it seems to be, ground zero for the huge culture war that's really been going on between audiences and critics, and especially with the critics trying to essentially silence the voices of everyday audiences. We saw that happen when they shut down the scores for Captain Marvel because they didn't like the way that it was going. We saw it also happen when they decided to change their rules and say, oh, now you have to verify your ticket purchase in order to vote, even though up to this point, every single movie that has been affected by that has almost the same exact score. So they give you a verified score from audiences and then an unverified score, meaning that people can still randomly score the film. It just won't be, heavily promoted and won't be under the official category. But what's interesting is that when you go back and forth between the two, sometimes there's a difference of like 5 to 10,000 reviews that have not been counted in the official score. It still is almost the exact same score. I think it changes. The biggest change that I've seen is about 1 or 2 percentage points, which in my mind proves that the scores that have been driven down, like, for example, Last Jedi or Captain Marvel, are pretty overall legitimate scores. The fact that you really haven't seen a difference. Now, we haven't gotten to a very controversial film yet at this point. I'm sure Star Wars Episode 9 will probably be really the first test of that, though, of course, there could be movies that happen before that. But what is going to be interesting to see is if there is ever a situation when the verified audience score has a gigantic difference with the unverified score as well. So I'll definitely be covering that as we go forward. But getting back to the main point of the Joker and how the audiences have just been overwhelmingly supporting this film and loving this film, this is the reason why I'm looking at the box office right now and saying, hey, the people have spoken. They heard all of the nonsense coming from critics. They heard all of the nonsense coming from the mainstream media news outlets and all of the fear-mongering that they were doing, which is essentially all that the media does nowadays. Does anyone else feel like we're in a crazy world where the media that is supposed to be covering important stories, the media that is trying to be telling us what's going on behind the scenes, things that have been hidden from us, they've become rather so obsessed with trying to control what we think, trying to control the narrative, trying to create narrative when there is none, like for the example with the Joker film in itself? Isn't it amazing that those people are essentially the enemy of the people because they are trying to push us to believe. They are pushing propaganda. They are pushing complete and utter nonsense to try to control the thoughts of the American people and the world's people at that, because it's not just American media that has been doing this. It's been media all across the world. Isn't it amazing that the people can still stand up and say, hey, we can actually see through this noise. We can actually see through the miles and miles of crap, the countless hours of time spent on crap articles and crap news reports, all about how this film was supposed to be dangerous, how this film was evil, how this film was going to make someone do something for the sole purpose that they wanted. The media wanted someone to do something. And if something eventually, God forbid, does happen, they will say, look, we were right, we told you so. Even though they would be the ones responsible for laying down the groundwork and creating the atmosphere to have something like this happen. But you know what the people said? The people looked at all this. The people looked at the nonsense. The people looked at the lies, looked at the spin, looked at the agenda and said, screw you. This film is something that seems to be worth seeing. And now people are seeing it, and now they are saying overwhelmingly, yes, this film is worth seeing. And not only do we see that with the tremendous amount of high ratings coming from audiences, but also too with this new box office information. So now we see right now currently a 60-40 split with the foreign and domestic market, which is pretty typical for a film. But for a rated R film, this is actually an extremely impressive number. So it made $234 million worldwide in its opening weekend. That means that this film is definitely on pace to end roughly around that $500 million mark, possibly even more than just that. Now, why won't it make more? There's some people that ask the question, why is it that this film likely won't make it to the $1 billion mark? Though some people think that it will. The reason why is, sadly enough, because of China. Because it's not getting a release in China, and that's going to be at least around $200 million that it would not be getting otherwise. And what's really sad about the China news is the fact that there is no real reason for this film to not get a China release. It's amazing to me that Disney has had every single one of their films get a China release, including films that tend to go and seem to go against the communist narrative of films they won't allow in their country. It's amazing that they will allow a film like Doctor Strange that deals specifically with magic, even though they themselves say we will not promote any film from the West, especially that pushes any type of religion or any type of magic or any type of understanding to that degree. But they will make exceptions for Disney. Why do you think that is the case? Probably because there's some crazy deal going on behind the scenes that apparently Warner Brothers just does not have, which is really sad because this is a film I think that would actually do very well in China. Maybe they think because they would look at China, or rather they would look at this movie and see that there are people standing up to corruption, and they would say, oh, we can't have that because we have our own fair share of corruption, right? We can't have people being inspired like this. To me, that's the only thing that this film could really ever inspire in my mind, is someone to say, hey, maybe we should stand up to the rich too. Maybe we should stand up to governments too. Maybe we should stand up to those that are oppressing us too. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to it than just that. Obviously, I'm not saying that this is a film that demonizes the rich, that demonizes the people in power. What I do think it does, though, is it does definitely raise those questions. It definitely does raise the, hey, we're living in a world right now, and there's many cities across the country, across the world, where you have just a few people that are living well, living in just complete and utter elegance. Well, there are other people that have done nothing wrong on their own end that are suffering. And that's to me, what's a really great character study with the Joker, is that it's a real story. It's a story of a real person. This is something that could happen. Someone with a mental illness that is essentially forgotten by society, and that person just gets pushed to the edge. This is something that does happen in a lot of ways. Now, that does not mean that it promotes it. And that's the lie that the media has been trying to spin, is that, well, guess what? We think that this is going to push someone to do it, to do this action, to be like the Joker, which is complete and utter nonsense, because it's already been shown and proven that there is no direct correlation between violence on screen and violence in video games with violence in real life. And as I said, if anything were to happen, I would put more of the blame on the media, because they're the ones that are essentially putting the idea in people's minds. They're the ones saying, this film is dangerous, this film is scary, this film should not be seen, danger, 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 protect your kids, hide your wife, is essentially the message that's been thrown for this film. When the reality is that all this film is an amazing character study, an amazing world study at that deals with the mind of a psychotic person who goes through a breakdown because of all the different things happening in his life, and you see the things that affect him. This is a film that is worth seeing. This is my favorite movie of 2019 thus far. I don't see any other film really taking that spot at this point. There really aren't a whole lot of great films that I can think of off the top of my head coming out over the next couple of months. I could be wrong on that. But in all honesty, this is definitely going to be in my top 5 at the very least, because of just how well made it is. And I'm so happy. I'm so glad to see that the rest of the world is seeing this film, is understanding the beauty of this film, is understanding the craft and the skill that went into making this film, and are not buying into the fear-mongering, are not buying into the lies, are not buying into the nonsense being spewed 24/7 by our 24-hour news cycle that gets obsessed with various topics and pushes to the point of propaganda, nonsensical stories, nonsensical headlines, complete and utter lies of headlines at that. This is an important film for so many different reasons. Not only is it an important film because to me, it is a brilliant film individually, it's also an important film because this is a film that says square face to the media when you go to see it, I don't care what you have to say. You are idiots. Screw you. If you want to be a part of that, go see this film. This is a movie that made 93.5, projected to make $93.5 million in the United States. If you were in the US and you were on the fence with this movie, go see it. If you like to pirate movies, hey, again, I understand movies are expensive these days. However, this is a film that I would say, no, go see it in theaters. Leave your house. Go and support this film. If you want to get this film closer to that $100 million mark from an opening weekend and make it one of the highest grossing films, it's already in the top 5 highest grossing films for rated R movies. But if you want to even push it even further than that, if you want to send a message, when it comes to the Joker, there's, a lot of people have been trying to put, there's a message being pushed. There's a message being pushed. When in reality, it's all about the character, right? It's all about the character study. And there really is no message. But if you want to have a message attached to this, the message is this. If you go support this film, if you go see this film, if you have this film be one of the most successful films of the year, have it be one of the most successful rated R films of all time, including without having a China release, if you want to go ahead and do that, what you will end up doing is you will go up and essentially tell the media that have been pushing these agendas, that have been pushing these headlines, you're wrong and you're an idiot. And it's time for us to step up and help people realize how completely biased, how completely controlled, or at least trying to control society the media has become. The media need to be smacked around, theoretically, philosophically, in the face. And the best way that you can do that is by going and supporting films like this. When there's a film that they hate that happens to be a really good film, it tells you that the problem is not in the movie itself, but in the people covering that movie. And if you want to go ahead and send a giant message to Hollywood, to the media, and to all the madness that's going around in our world right now, go support this film. I might be giving too much importance to this film. I know. I might be overhyping this film for some, but I really do think that it's an important enough film for us to see. And $234 million for a rated R film for an opening weekend is fantastic. Is it one of the greatest openings of all time? It's up there. It may not be number one, but it's definitely up there. But if we want to have this film be as good as it really is, financially speaking, we need to go out and support it. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about this and all the things we talked about in the comment section below. Also, let me know, what do you think the final number is going to be? Again, $234 million as an estimate. That's a very, very strong opening. I would say that it's definitely on pace to make the $500 million minimum that I suspected that it would make. But even then, there could be some problems, right? It's going to depend on if there's that week 1, week 2 drop off. I'm praying that the word of mouth for this film is so positive, which it already seems to be, that it keeps the legs going. It keeps the movie going strong even next weekend, the weekend after, and the weekend after, especially once competition starts to rile up for this film as we get later into October. But seriously, take a friend, take your family. Don't listen to the media on this one. This is a fantastic film. It's making money at the box office. And now you know, not just from what people say online, but now you have actual hard numbers to look to and say, oh, people are actually going to see this. I want to be a part of that. Be a part of it. Join us. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Like this video, smash the like button, give me a subscribe, it helps out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.